And that's literally the best mistake you can learn from, because better that's how you grow your better game knowledge, number one, and it's how you make better just overall decisions with more of like a deeper knowledge base. All right. As always, in any of these sessions, if you have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to talk to me about, feel free to ask me to pause and we can start talking. But yeah, let's get right into it. So we're playing some McCree here on defense. Pretty default positioning. We're playing with Sigma Zarya. So this is what I like to call, and what most people call these days, a double off-tank composition. And this is extremely common in ranked. Obviously, people want to play the heroes where they feel they can have the most individual impact, and off-tanks typically do that. But it changes the way you should be thinking about your individual positioning, especially as a DPS member, because it means all of a sudden you don't really have a real front line. And literally just both of these heroes, even combined, compared to just Reinhardt, are obviously going to struggle to hold space against just a shield walking at them. It's not this Sigma's shield, it's a lot of S sounds, is not the same as Reinhardt's shield. It's not as oppressive, it's not as strong, and all these kind of things. So when we are playing with the double off tank, how do you think that changes your thought process and your positioning? We'll focus on that.
I don't know if this is true or not, but this is my opinion. If you're just playing with two off tanks, I should look to get more off angles and like lower flanks, or should I say safe flanks
Mm-hmm.
that you
So
can back out. Yeah,
for sure, the biggest thing for me is making sure that you're definitely looking for those flanks. I mean, there's not a ton of examples from this space, but maybe say they're coming up here, either having the high ground to flank, having an angle like this to flank, or holding back, sort of back here, and being able to mix up your approach from different sorts of angles and stuff like that, so they can't. You're not shooting into just a Reinhardt shield. That's your goal, is to just get around that Reinhardt shield, without
yeah,
dying, obviously. The biggest thing about having double off tank is your stability just goes extremely into the depths of hell. There's once bubble is used by Zarya, once self bubble is used by Zarya, she's going to be running. Once shield is gone from Sigma, or once he's even retracted it and he's waiting to recast it, or once he's used the shift, he's gone. So that means having a forward positioning like this is not bad right now, but you need to be already thinking about how soon you're going to have to fall back. And that means that you're going to be reliant on your own types of position, like not reliant on tank pressure to find positioning, like Geralt is up here. And it means that even when situations where it looks like you have a tank in front of you and you looks like you have stability, you should almost always be thinking about how you're going to get pushed by a real main tank, by an actual oppressive frontlining member who could literally just walk on these people. The good news is, when you're running these double off tanks, that you're almost expecting one of them to get shut down and pushed and not be able to do much, but that means the other one has a really strong opportunity to shine. You can almost think of yourself as the similar vein between you and your other DPS, especially when you're playing double hit scan or double anchored DPS like this. So don't be afraid to get pushed out is the biggest thing here. Don't be afraid to get pushed out if you're sticking with Sigma or even Zarya or even on your own, because that means you have so many other threats that might capitalize on that attention. Anytime you are getting pushed out, because you don't have a front line, just means that you need to take yourself out of the fight for like a little bit. Drop that aggro, basically. Get away, get out of LOS, stay safe, go back to your healers, go back to a health pack, go find a new angle, anything like that. And know that your team has not one but two threatening tanks and your other DPS that might be able to capitalize on this situation. And whether or not they do is yet to be seen, of course, but you almost need to hope that they do in those situations. You can't do everything your own because you don't have that front line breaking through that space for you. So again, the biggest thing is just not gluing yourself to a tank and not gluing yourself to forward positioning too aggressively, and being willing to give up space when needed. So yeah, this spacing is great. So far, we haven't seen too many threats. We're looking to take high ground. I would like to see you split yourself from your soldier. I mean, this case pays off, but the biggest thing when you're holding both DPS together is it's obviously very easy to shut down both with the same kinds of resources. So if you're both getting blocked by a Ryan shield pushing up here, this is more McCree's mistake for overextending and getting himself killed. But if Ryan was ahead of him and both of you were getting pushed out, now that's both damage sources taken out of the fight instead of just one of you. And again, your ideal situation, if you want to be the solo carry in this fight, is to be the one. Sorry, I just realized I've been calling him Cree instead of his true name, Cassidy, of course. So for example, if they were 6-man rotating over here, and your soldier can't do anything against a Rhine shield, right? And there's got a Roadhog right behind him. He's running away because he doesn't want to get hooked. you should be thinking the same way once you see this Rhine approaching. But if you were down here, this is a moment where you could be flanking a little bit, finding shots around the shield up here, and then once they take this space and push your soldier out, you need to see how much value you've gotten from that point, and then you can either continue holding aggressively or then waiting for the next time this happens. Once they're up here, that doesn't mean the fight's over, doesn't mean the point's won, but eventually they're going to have to move to points, so how are you going to capitalize on their next rotation? Either they're going to push you out, or they're going to push someone else, and then you can try and capitalize on that with a new angle. It's all about juggling that pressure between you and your other threats in this type of composition. And as much as I'd love to be able to tell you, you can just go wherever you want and click heads all day, the reality is people are going to see you as a threat, and they're going to want to shut you down. The key is just not having everything shut down at once by the same things. But yeah, obviously, really good kill on that McCree. Unfortunately, he gets res back up. And now we're setting up on this high ground here. Really good angles here. Really safe from the Roadhog. Would like to see... I don't know what he killed himself with. It must have been a Helix rocket from the soldier that he deflected into the ground. That's a little funny. Biggest thing here, when we are going through the space. So number one, I like your patience taking this duel. Like, you're not all-inning, you're not going straight to the edge and overexposing yourself or things like that. When you see this Genji, just talking general dueling tips when going against the Genji, obviously you know the things like throwing flashbang on the ground and stuff like that. But in this case, I would love to see you acknowledge the fact that he's just 0 HP, and that even with deflect available, you could be really, really aggressive right here. Instead of rolling away, even, like, you could be rolling forward and just trying to melee him.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, he was going to die no matter what happened there. But yeah, it's all about just taking that information in as fast as possible. Even things like seeing that he's purple means you can position more aggressively there. All right, I like that we're splitting. Oh, wait, what's up?
The same thing as yesterday.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my God. I just did it.
So yeah, one of the things we talked about yesterday, for those out of the loop, is sort of like aim styles and being just really aware of your mechanics and what you're doing so that you can focus on improving specific things. And we noticed with Fleeked here, or changed in-game, is you do a lot of aiming with your movement keys, which is not uncommon in Overwatch, but it might be a sign of you defaulting into like old aim styles when you're trying to work on your mechanical control on your mouse and kind of things. So I'm never going to say like don't weave movement into your aim, because like you're always moving in Overwatch. It's by default part of your aim. But there are situations where you need to either under or over flick because of different movement, as long as you're aware of it. So this is a lot going on, and this is almost like a perfect situation to highlight the strengths of your composition versus theirs. So I'm just going to go back 10 seconds, and I'm going to turn the spectate overlay on, and I'm going to show you, like, they're going to, not perfectly, because no team is perfect, but they're going to look like one big spear going in one direction, trying to push through with their stronger front line, with their straightforward resources, with Ryan Zarya. You know they want to go in one direction. They're going to try and start a fight, and then we're going to scatter like roaches, and they're only going to be able to find, at best, ideally, one of us while the other members punish. So I don't know how this fight's going to turn out yet, but it looks like a pretty good setup for this composition. So we'll see the red team's all looking in one direction right now. The Rhine's pushing in, and everyone's trying to follow in on the Rhine, except maybe the Genji who finds Zarya there. So now you see they pushed from here, they're moving into here, and we're all over the place right now. There's a soldier up on the high ground, there's us high nooning over here, the Sigma Zarya went this way. There's so many different things that they have to worry about, that this is where we thrive in the chaos in this type of composition. And the biggest thing for you as an individual is just knowing your individual threats. So the big context clues for here, and I think this is a really, really, really good high noon timing, is just acknowledging where all your threats are. And they're going to be a lot easier to read than you are because of just the nature of your compositions. They're more reliant on their front line, so they're more likely to be glued to them. And when those resources get spent, they're more likely to be weaker as the fight develops. So when Zarya bubbles are gone, when Rhine shield's gone, or when Genji's not able to find a new target with Blade, they're starting to run out of gas. And this is like the normal Overwatch composition where they roll in, they use their buttons, they press Q, but then if they don't immediately win the fight off that, how do they survive? Your team comp is different in a way that you don't count on that initial impact, that extreme burst of cooldowns, of resources, of damage, whatever you want to call it, but you look for the individual outplays and the ways that individuals can punish on the tension more than anything. So this is a great example of punishing on attention. Unfortunately, your high noon gets canceled, but like McCree flashbanging you instead of shooting the soldier means he kills two. You killing the McCree because Genji was all the way over here. It's like all these kind of things, they can't handle all these different amounts of pressure. And this is like a perfect example of that absorption and then the re-engage, I guess, from this type of composition. The biggest thing you need to be thinking about in these situations is just not biting off more than you can chew. More than you can chew. Yeah. So like if that Rhine started walking up the stairs behind you or something like that, like you don't even need to make a high noon play. You're already doing your job by taking that attention. That's the biggest thing. I mean,
yeah.
Easy to say also, like, we won with ults and stuff like that, because it's kind of true. Our ults found really good value, especially that tac visor. But ultimately, they put themselves in such a weak position because they just immediately played all of their cards, and they had nothing for the mid-fight. This is the downside of this composition. When we lock ourselves into this sort of traditional frontline versus frontline fight, we cannot go toe-to-toe with these tanks. There's literally nothing we can do. We have a weaker shield, we have less damage, we have less instant kill potential, and they have just a 1600 HP wall that what are we supposed to do about? So this is not your fault as an individual, but this is the situation where we need to be finding value in order to win this fight for our team. So this is the situation I'd like to see you up here, maybe soldier up here again, or we play like safer angles, like down here. Sorry for my poor handwriting. I am writing with a mouse. And then we let them into the point wide enough, and then we can collapse on these angles. If we can't hold an aggressive angle like these to capitalize on the first situation we see, then we almost need to give up space so that we can force them into this sort of like valley of death where we've got control of high grounds, where we've got better safe angles and stuff like that. That's our best opportunity, just to draw them as thin as possible. And again, I think the best analogy I can make is imagine them as just this spear coming towards your team, and you don't have a shield, at least not a strong enough one to block it, so you need to get around the tip of the spear and find ways into the vulnerable backline, basically in this case, just around the Reinhardt. If you can, instead of shoot a shield, shoot a Cassidy, or a soldier or a Mercy, that's insanely more value than shooting at a shield, as I'm sure you're aware. And yeah, without ultimates and without just an overwhelming amount of pressure, we're never expected to win this frontline fight. So we need to find ways around it. The biggest thing for you as an individual is we should be acknowledging that as soon as possible. And this is the most amount of macro thinking you need to do. They have a main tank, we don't. So I'm going to play differently because of that. Yep. All right, I like this flank a lot. And look, even though they killed our tank line here, like we still have a lot of active threats. Like we still have both DPS in this game, and they're all kind of corralled. Unfortunately, they have the bonus value of we need to touch the cart in order for them to not win the map. So that's where this extra sort of sense of pressure comes from. But you as an individual, ideally, should never be forced to think about touching point, and you should be looking to set up flanks like this as often as possible, as long as you have the information. As long as you see where the front line is, as long as you see where like your threats are, and as long as you know how many team resources you can depend on and things like that, then you should be looking for these flanks as often as you can. And it doesn't mean like glue yourself to this location either, just like before, like don't glue yourself to your tanks. As soon as someone comes to you, you run. And now, if your team was still alive, that'd be more time for your Sigma, more time for your Soldier, more time for your Zarya to continue finding threats. Anything that you can take doesn't need to be resulting in kills from yourself, but should be expected value from your team.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit aggressive here, mainly just because I don't think we're thinking about how far our spawns are. We did have like half of our team spawning late, so even just holding this aggressively, we don't know where our healers are. I guess I'm not sure if you knew your Baptiste was right behind you, but I guess he might have missed a shot or two. And we should be thinking about stability for ourselves more than anything. And again, we talked about that checklist a little bit yesterday, where your first thought whenever you're doing anything is how are you going to survive? If you can't play to survive, you can't play to do anything else. So then we start thinking about, okay, where's my team? What can my team do that helps me do whatever I want to do? And in a composition like this, you'll very often get to that third step of what can I do as an individual to outplay the enemy team? Because your position and stuff like that is not that dependent on your tanks. The biggest thing you're depending on is just the attention they're taking. This is the downfall of double off tank. How do you take space with this composition? And again, a little bit more macro stuff. I know we want to talk more individually, but again, how is you acknowledging the fact that we have just a weaker front line? Well, now we've got Ryan, so it's not as weak. But acknowledging the fact that we had Sigma Zarya for so long, how do we take space against a front line that's holding defensively? How do we clear a soldier on the high ground while their main tank pushes point? Like, there's no one we can easily get to because we're going to get poked out because we don't have shields or Diva Matrix or things like that. And we can't run to the front line because we know we don't win that fight. So around here, we've grouped up for the most part. Our soldier is dead, unfortunately. So this is where we can make an individual decision, and hopefully, if we're lucky enough, our team makes a complementary decision, we'll say. So what do you think would be the best course of action that makes sort of you puts you in the best position to carry through this team fight?
They like for all of us to just go high ground like a death ball kind of
Mhm.
thing.
The danger
At this moment,
Mhm.
yeah.
As long as you know the front line won't contest you, like if Ryan's locking himself to cart, or if he's over here, or and their soldiers up here, or something like that, as long as you know you're not going to run into the Ryan in this case, I think that's absolutely fine. Because Sigma's
Yeah.
only weak in comparison to Ryan. He's still a way better frontliner than Soldier Mercy, than even just a solo Zarya or something like that. So you can still use those resources aggressively as long as you know they're not going to be outmatched. So yeah, I like that a lot. But we're in ranked. We can't guarantee that Sigma's thinking the same thing we are. So until you literally see Sigma walking over here and taking the elevator and helping you deal with this soldier attack visoring, which he does a good job of, I'm not going to knock that. That was definitely well played by the Sigma. But unless you know that's going to happen through communication or through seeing it on your screen in front of you, what do you think you could do as an individual to put yourself in the best position possible here? What are the key signs you're looking for, I guess?
To be completely honest, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, that's why we're talking. And these are the kind of questions that are worth asking to, I mean, put you in uncomfortable situations. And if this is something you're trying just as a player, as an individual, a lot of the time it comes down to trial and error. Like, hey, maybe I should try and stick with my Sigma and just hope for the best. Hope he does the thing I think he should do. Maybe you should just wait and spawn. And stay here. It's like, okay, unless I see with my very own eyes that Sigma's going to take high ground, I'm not going to depend on that. But if I see him do it, then I'm going to go follow him up. That's like a slower approach, but again, similar outcome. Or you could go on just a solo mission. You could go run to cart. I don't know. You could go wrap around here, go for a flank high noon play, go try and take the enemy high ground if you wanted to play a very much solo queue game, and those kind of things. Yeah. I would say, I mean, on paper, the best option, like you said, would be to group up, take high ground. I 100% agree with that. But in the ranked situation, the biggest thing I would say here is just making sure you're moving safely. You don't need to make almost any decision as long as whatever position you're holding is safe. And safe in this case, I would say would be like, at the very least, along this wall, maybe best in here. You don't want to stray too far back because, like, if your Sigma starts going up the elevator and you're all the way back in this choke, it might not even matter that soldiers being pressured. He could just drop and then duel you, kind of thing, which is almost what he tries to do as we approach here. So the biggest thing with your movement here is it looks to me like you're banking too much on this, and then when it doesn't go exactly as intended, like your Sigma does end up getting on the soldier, but you're not able to follow him, you kind of get lost for positioning in this space, and you don't know where to go next. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So again, all we have to do, and it doesn't need to be complicated, all we have to do is, if we don't know what to do, go back to that checklist. Step 1, survive. So if we can't follow Sigma, first thing we think of, natural cover, choke points. If we need to, back to spawn, where are our supports? These are all important things to know. First one's just map geometry. I'm sure you have a good general knowledge of pretty much every map anyway, so no need to worry there. And then the second thing is a little bit of paying attention to our team. Like, where's my most dependable tank? Where are my supports where I can get healing? Things like that. And then, don't want to erase survive. Number 2, again, you pay attention to your team. Where are my supports? Where are my tanks? And then 3, if all else fails, if you're here alone and your team is just splitting off in 6 directions and there's no one to play around, maybe you can look for some individual value. Maybe you can use the fact that they're taking 6 different fights to go turn 1 into a 2v1, or to go get a flank high noon play because they're committing everything on your Sigma. Things like that. That's the individuals. So again, if ever you feel just lost or struggling to come to a final answer in these kind of situations, just fall back to that checklist. Biggest thing here is, unless you know this soldier attack visor is getting denied, like by the Sigma shield, for example, even this Baptiste lamp I don't think is going to be good enough to help you, especially while he's pocketed, right? So the biggest thing I'd like to see here is that adjustment to, I like how you're hugging the wall, and you're looking for potential options here, so that's already good. But I'd like to see you look at where your team is and look at what they're trying to do here. What you're doing here is you're tunneling a little bit too much on your target, and it's causing you to get split from your team. You managed to find your way back. Again, now you're tunneling a little bit on your target still. You survived. You assume everyone else survived despite your Sigma going down, our Baptiste lamp being used. You're not even sure what HP percentage your teammates are at. And then you go for an aggressive play despite being on the back foot for that whole exchange and losing a tank. Right? So, and then that little overextension is what gets us punished. And to be honest, I don't think there's much more that would have gone well if you had played like quote unquote perfectly. Unless you hit like a double headshot on the soldier or something like that and completely shut him down. So it's not like this is an easy situation. The biggest thing is we need to always have a plan in mind so we don't just end up autopiloting or tunneling on targets and stuff like that. That's why we have that checklist to fall back to. Ooh, that was clean.
Wait, this one? Yeah, he was walking the same line.
Yeah,
So it's
we take
very
those.
easy shot.
So tell me a little bit about this high noon. So yeah, perfect headshot on the soldier. We take those. We tack visored there, and then we start high nooning here. What was the sort of what made you think this was a good time to high noon, and what do you think the expected value of this high noon will be?
I didn't really expect any kills. I just wanted to put more pressure
Mhm.
to the enemy, basically. Just
Yep,
wanted
fair enough. Like you're
to-
snowballing off of an early advantage, and you're looking to keep up that pressure so that they don't have an opportunity to fall back, or maybe they panic and stay on point, and they stay open to both your high noon and potentially this tack visor as well. Nice. Anything else?
No, that's all. Just want to put more pressure.
Awesome. Yeah. The only other thing I would say that you should look for is just, I mean, this might be like pushing like the higher limits of how much you can pay attention to, but try to acknowledge any threats. So, for example, this McCree. If you knew he was there and he's able to line up a double headshot while you're high nooning, I'm sure you as a Cassidy player know how much you can punish those situations. Or if there was anyone with crowd control abilities, like if this was a hog instead of a Cassidy and you could be hooked, obviously you need to be aware of that. And then the only other thing I would say to be aware of is how many defensive resources the enemy has. So stuff like percentage shield health and whether bubbles are used or not. If you have time. Obviously, you're trying to capitalize very quickly on this setting, but then understanding how much expected value and then how you develop after this high noon play can depend on all of those kinds of resources. But overall, I like this high noon play a lot. What it does is basically lock Reinhardt to this position. Now that we have a real main tank, we can actually go challenge the Reinhardt with our main tank, and they get punished just for staying still. They do a good job of blocking the high noon, unfortunately, but overall, I mean, you're seeing what's happening. I would say that that nano from on the Rhine wasn't all necessary to clean up these kills either. Ooh, and then we just get a little bit of the shield. This isn't a case of tunneling or anything. This is literally just you expected your main tank to keep going, and he didn't. Right? So this is a good example of even when you have very straightforward resources that you can usually depend on, this is a situation where you need to play around what you see, not what you expect, kind of thing. And this is obviously mainly around your own teammates, because you can typically predict the enemy more often than you can predict your team sometimes, because you're not always aware of what they're thinking of, how much pressure they're under, those kind of things. So even just that little bit of roll, unless you know the next 2 shots are going to secure that kill on that Zarya, make sure you know how your Reinhardt's doing. Another situation like this is the perfect opportunity. Like you're laying in the brushes right now. You're Solid Snake with a box over you. You're playing stealth missions. This is considered downtime. And the number one thing you can be doing more often in downtime is just looking around and looking for your team. Seeing that you've got a Baptiste up here with you so you can be more aggressive with dueling. So like maybe even if 2 people up here with Baptiste on your side and with Lamp, maybe even with his ultimate and stuff like that, you can take more aggressive duels. But you're not going to know that unless you turn around to see him. Seeing how much pressure your Reinhardt's providing, which is an interesting amount right now. This is quite the position he's found himself in. And knowing that he doesn't have support from his Baptiste or his Ana at this moment could mean like maybe you get aggressive in this moment and try to capitalize on the fact that this Rhine's taking contention. Maybe take some shots on the Moira or the Mercy, maybe even the Soldier and stuff like that. But we're not going to know these things until we literally see them, right? So we need to be more active with our camera movement, just checking up on our team any chance we get. Because yeah, we're just sitting around. Rhine's like duel of the century right now with Zarya. Like these frontliners taking so much pressure, and you know what that means? That means there's no shield in your face. That means more free shots on the Mercy or the McCree across. Sorry, the Cassidy. I'm never gonna get over that. The Cassidy across the map. And yeah, this is all just potential time that we're missing. We're missing uptime right now because we didn't have the information. That's really all it comes down to. Once you find the uptime, you're popping off. You're finding shots. You're getting kills. Priority kills on the Moira, no less. You're winning duels against the McCree. Easy money, right? It's all about finding these moments consistently as quickly as possible without getting punished. That's just Overwatch, really. Finding key moments where you can do the best you can do without dying. That's really all it takes. And it all starts with information. It all starts with looking around the map, seeing your team, seeing the enemy team, understanding cooldowns. Eventually, you'll reach points in comp where macro stuff starts mattering, like ultimate economy, different compositional matchups and stuff like that. But for right now, all that matters is your tanks are being shot at, so you should be shooting at them.
Yeah.
Even, again, you see your Rhine, you know this is a position you want to take, but do you know where your supports are? Do you know your Zarya's down on the cart still? Do you know how much your Rhine's going to be able to say? Like, without Zarya bubbles, without all of us standing up here, he's probably going to be backing up across bridge, even though right now he wants to go for a shatter play. He's calling his ultimate is ready. He's trying to, like, drop from the top rope right now. This is a case of Rhine doing the same thing. Like, if we go to his POV, does he turn around one time before going for the shatter play? I strongly doubt it. and then look what happens, right? This is the exact same problem, and so this is not meant to discourage you for the teammates you're going to be encountering, but it's to show like this is a very common problem, and it takes some time to address it. Ooh, nice little sleep from your Ana. Nice high noon play. So again, we'll do the pop quiz. What were the things you thought made this a good high noon play, and what expected value did you want to take from it?
Yeah, okay, so I saw the Reinhardt and the Zarya just separated,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I was like, it's a very high noon, I should just use it.
Okay.
The game is almost over anyway. That's what I thought.
Fair enough. Again, the biggest thing is just we're not thinking about additional threats. So yes, this is a safe angle from these people, but then obviously this soldier's not too afraid of dropping on you and trying to get this kill before you pull the trigger. But he ends up paying the price for it. So it's not that this didn't find value, or it's not that this wasn't a good high noon for this game or anything like that. It's that we need to up our decision-making process so we're ready for more broad situations. In situations where we could get punished, we need to think about what if. Like, okay, we didn't get punished, but what if that soldier hit more headshots, or he shot a Helix rocket before committing? What if that McCree didn't get slept and he 180s and high noons you instead, kind of thing, you know? And as long as we can eliminate as many what ifs, like, oh, what if Ryan shields my whole high noon? Oh, wait, his shield's half HP already. I don't need to worry about that. Oh, what if Zarya bubbles someone at the last second? Oh, wait, I saw both bubbles. Oh, what if Hog's going to come from a flank and hook me? Oh, wait, no, I just saw him use hook. Or I see him with the team. He's too far away. All these kind of things add into that decision-making process to help make that a well-rounded decision and make sure that you are, again, number one, playing safe and understanding what kind of value you're going to be playing for. Does that make sense?
I feel like it makes sense, but like I feel like it's just too much information to think about in like 1 second.
Yeah,
basically.
You're not wrong. The thing is, you got to get your thinking out of the way before you hit Q. So this is all premeditated. This is all something you're thinking about leading up to this moment. You're exactly right. You don't have time to, once you're in this position, once you're already thinking about high nooning, it's too late. But leading up to that fight, you know you're going to have ultimate. You know where your tanks are playing. Like, you're seeing the fight evolve around you. You're waiting for specific things, and you can tell yourself, it's like, okay, I'm going to wait till I see Zarya use both bubbles before I hit Q. And then that thinking's out of the way. You see both bubbles come out, and then you're like, okay, I hit Q. Oh, but I forgot to think about the soldier on high ground, right? So next time, it's like, okay, I'm going to wait till I see all my DPS threats. I'm going to wait till I see the Hog, both DPS, maybe an Ana across the map, and if they can't sleep me, they can't kill me, then I'm going to high noon, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. It's hard to think about all these things, and this is not something you're going to go into your next game and be like, oh my god, I'm Rain Man now. I saw everything. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I see the solution to every problem I've ever had. It's not that simple. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to really train your brain to think about these things in anticipation. But the good news is, once you are able to get these things out of the way, they'll become almost second nature, and you'll like stop having to actively think about them, and it'll become almost intuition, where like you'll hear like an a sleep dart go off across the map in your right earphone and then be like, okay, high noon time, like without even thinking. Like it'll be like that fast kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, start small, start focusing on main things. The biggest thing, again, like I'd say, focus on your tanks and your supports on your team. Don't even start thinking about the enemy team and how you're going to outplay them until you know what kind of setup you have. Are you holding aggressively over here, or are you holding defensively over here? Are your supports on the ground, or are they up here with you? Are you able to flank without pressure because you see the tanks matching each other, or are the tanks taking high ground to come take you out? These kind of things build up one after another, but they don't start until we start taking the time to build that information and start paying attention to all these things and start making more informed decisions. The worst problem you're gonna have when leading into these situations is, number one, there's gonna be like that one extra thing you forgot to think about, which is extremely frustrating. But then after that, there's going to be situations where you thought everything was perfect and it played out on paper, but it still didn't go the way you thought it would. And that's literally the best mistake you can learn from, because that's how you grow your better game knowledge, number one, and it's how you make better just overall decisions with more of a deeper knowledge base. I've been looking at this game. I've been watching players of every skill level since basically the game first came out, and I still don't know how every interaction should go. There's still things that surprise me when I see them in game. So don't expect to know everything. Just try to make the best guess possible as often as possible. That's my advice. That's the takeaway from today, I'd say.
Yeah.